Welcome back to Fast Monty's Garage. Today we're installing my new IMI Hi Torque mini starter on my GTO. Now, those who've been following the channel know that last episode I actually replaced the pinion gear on my old IMI starter. So you might be wondering, what the heck? Why are you installing a new starter when you fixed the old starter? Great point. So a couple episodes ago I had a fail. And I tried to change the ring gear on my flywheel and it didn't work. I ended up buying a new flywheel. So learning from that accident or mistake, I bought a backup starter. I was able to successfully fix the old starter. So yes, I can use this one. But what I want to announce to you guys that you may not know about is there's a slightly different version out now that allows for 75 thousandths more clearance on the mounting plate. What does that mean? That's a great question, Bobby. That means when you mount this to the engine, Butler Performance figured out that if you take 75 thousandths off that mounting flange, it gets the pinion closer to the flywheel. Why would you want to do that? Hey, good question, John. The reason you want to do that is obviously to get closer to the flywheel. Now, what many people don't know is that when a block is align honed, that's where all the main bearings are actually honed out, it actually raises the level of the crankshaft. So think about this for a second. If you raise the level of the crankshaft, you're making the flywheel further away from the stock location of the starter gear. So you may not know it, but you're not fully engaged and you might strip your ring gear, like what happened to me. Second to that is the spacing is very, very, very hard to measure when you have your bell housing on. So since my bell housing is still off and I have the flywheel on, we're going to mount the starter and we can visually show you exactly the distance you need for that, what they call it, backlash or lash in between the pinion of the starter and the ring gear of your flywheel, to give you guys a better sense of what you need to look out for. And maybe we can come up with a custom tool to measure that gap when the bell housing's on. Because per the instructions, it says 25 thousandths is the right lash. Well, how in the hell do you measure that with the bell housing on? You can't. At least I couldn't. So I was kind of guessing on the original install, which may have been the reason why I tore up my ring gear. That's why you're better off just getting the 75 thou removed from the mounting pad from Butler Performance. And IMI might have it as well for Chevys and Fords. You might have to touch base with them, but part numbers are below, links are below to Butler Performance if you have a Pontiac, and you know, we can go from there. So subscribe if you haven't. There's gonna be more projects like this, more learning experiences, mainly by me, but obviously saves you a lot of money if I'm making all the mistakes. And if I've ever helped out in the past, hey, consider getting a hat, shirt, links are below, and the Full Monty Club. Feel free to join. All proceeds go to help the channel. But let's get going, get this starter installed, and test our clearances. Here's my old starter, or standard starter, on your right. And then on your left is the new one. And you can tell by the distance of this mounting hole to the base. See how it's thicker here? So Butler Performance spec is 75 thousandths removed from that surface, which mounts upwards into your engine block. So that's the big difference. You can still order the standard, but if you have a Pontiac, you might as well get the 75 thou removed version. And it comes with different shims to help you out. You can also buy extra shims, not very expensive. That also comes with a lateral shim, I'm going to call this, which goes in between the block and the starter should you need it, and we'll cover that in a second. It comes with a pigtail. This is what you connect to your starter wire or your purple wire to your ignition, or you attach this to the post if you have a separate solenoid that starts your engine. Don't worry, there are instructions included with this too, and mounting bolts, of course. Now let's get into the critical dimensions we have to look out for. Number one, you see all these mounting holes? That allows you to pivot the starter based on the location with your headers, etc., etc. So the way it comes out of the box actually fits perfect for me. It's the same setup as my original. The next thing we need to concern ourselves with is the distance from the gear on the flywheel. So let me change directions here and use one of the ring gears that I didn't use. So once this is mounted in your car, we have to take a measurement from this edge of the starter gear to this edge of the flywheel gear. That measurement needs to be 100 thousandths plus or minus 50, which means 50 to 150 thousandths away from that edge. And that's what you have to do once it's in the car. The other thing we have to look out for is the gear mesh. Let me show you that top view. Now here's that crazy measurement I was referring to earlier. We need to measure the distance between the gear and the tooth. Yeah, so easy, right? That measurement needs to be between 20 and 30 thousandths. So that's what the shims are for the blocks. If you get further away, that distance gets bigger. And I'm referring to this distance right in here. We have to somehow get a feeler gauge in there to determine what 25 thousandths is, which would be ideal. So I did my best to find a tapered feeler gauge on Amazon. This is 25 thousandths, as you can see there, but as you can imagine, that's still not going to fit. I have to narrow this down even further to get it in there to get to 25 thousandths. Man! Alright, if you're curious how wide this is to get a feeler gauge in there, it's right around 100 thousandths. So I'm going to get to modifying my feeler gauges to fit. Here's my crazy plan. So I have all the feeler gauges from 18 thou to 32 thou clamped together, and I'm just going to take my die grinder with my 80 grit flap disc and just start grinding on both sides until I get to our target of 100 thousandths. Oh yeah. Oh yes, look at that customness. Sweet. Alright, there's the 25 thou feeler gauge stuck in between the gear, both gear faces, and there's a gap from, say, the point of the gear to the root, and I think I'm going to try and measure that as well, because that'll probably be easier to measure in the car. Let's go ahead and mock it up in the car and see how many shims we have to put in to make that match. Okay, this is my original starter with the original shim, because I am super curious to see what my original fitment was, because if it was too big, that's why it might have shredded the flywheel. So when you pull this out, there's a helix inside that solenoid that makes it twist, and it will self-lock against the flywheel if you're lucky. And now we can just use our feeler gauge because it's pressing against one of the teeth. I'm just holding it so I don't push it back in. So I got the feeler gauge in, and this is my 30 thousandths, and it's getting in there. So that means we have room for improvement. So maybe that was the reason why I shredded the gear. And it got old, right? So I'll go ahead and continue adding shims. I actually have to take away shims, I think. I'm gonna take this shim out, see what it gets us. No shim, and let's see what we got here. So that's pretty nice and snug. And this is my 28. That got us 2 thou? Yikes. Okay, well, we're out of shims. So let's go ahead and put the shortened block in. So the Butler spec version, it says BP right here, I just noticed. Upside down, BP, Butler Performance. 75 thousandths has been taken off the mounting surface, which is actually on the bottom. Now the shim I took out is 15 thousandths. And 15 thousandths out of here bought us roughly 2/1000 on the flywheel engagement. So if we start with 75 and we need to say another 4 removed, that's 30 thou. So we need 45 thou of shims in here to, in theory, buy us 4 more thou on the flywheel. Yeah, you might need to think about that. But 45 thousandths. So I have a whole bunch of shims. We just need to make the right combo to get to 45 and then load them in and see where we come at. Ironically, that pile I just held, 45. So I'm going to put those in with the new starter, see what that gets us. Here's the new starter with my multiple shims. Remember, I put 45 thou shims in there, and this is going to blow your mind. This is my 25 thou feeler gauge. Nice and snug, not too tight. Oh, sorry, upside down. Sorry, stop yelling. 25 thousandths, and that, according to the instructions, is perfect. And by the way, tapering the taper, probably not necessary. Check this out. This is the 20 thou. You can get it in there, so don't worry about tapering the damn taper. Ay, ay, ay. While we're here, I wanted to test another theory, and that's to find a diameter that fits in here as a test. And I think I just found it. Basically measuring this gap at the valley of the ring gear and the crest of the pinion gear on that tooth. So I'm just putting it in like that. You guys can see that? So that diameter will change based on your distance away. That's the other way to measure it. So what is the diameter of this thing? 70 thousandths. So if you can find, or at least for me, if I can find a 70 thou pin or a nail, bend it 90 degrees so it's up, when it's up in the bell housing, you can slip it in there and test your fit. So that might help you guys out too. Before I get to wiring, I just noticed that is a sign of arcing on the shell, and I checked out the mating connector and there's definitely arcing there. So I don't know, maybe that has something to do with it too. So I'm gonna go ahead and re-shield the cable so that doesn't happen again on the new starter. All right, I wired it up. I'll show you the insulation I added during the install video, but super awkward. There's no gear shift right here. So I keep grabbing for the stick. There's no stick. One of you guys suggested last video or a couple videos ago to disconnect the coil to test the starter. I actually had that in mind, so that's what I did. The coil's disconnected, fully wired up, the GoPro is running, and let's see if it cranks over. Cross everything you have 2 of. Oh, hell yes! And that sounds like way different, so I think we found the issue. One more try. Hell yes! Here's the replay. Hopefully the GoPro got it. One more try. Here's how I fixed that arcing issue on that battery cable. I added a 3/4 inch diameter hose, basically for, you know, your heater in your car. So that will get that nice and isolated. So I'll go ahead and throw it in there, and I'll show you the other thing I added. Pay particular attention to these machined edges because they're super sharp. So what I did was I took the same 3/4 inch hose, split it, and then wrapped it around the wires, and then I'll zip tie it to this crossbar here, and I'll hold it nice and sturdy. Optional last step, DEI starter heat wrap. So here's the drama about trying to measure the lash on that gear when you cannot get a hand up here. Maybe right here you can kind of get in there, but man, yeah, shimming a starter is zero fun. you saw I can't put my hand in the bell housing. So the good news is we did figure out what pin size to use to get the 25 thou lash. So a 70 thou diameter pin, if you can fit it in between the crest of the tooth and the root of the ring gear, you're at the right shimming distance. Speaking of shimming distances, if you have a Pontiac block, I highly recommend you get the Butler Performance spec mounting block with the 75 thou shaved off the top, because you can always shim it more. As you saw with my original starter, you run out of shims and you're still not the right distance away from the ring gear, which proves that was the issue. So I didn't have it shimmed properly. It started to wear a little bit, and once you get to that point you're past the tolerance range, it's going to start stripping teeth, and that's what happened. So the other reason I was talking to Butler Performance about the added benefit of having that extra 70 thou to play with is different ring gears and different flex plates have slightly different tolerances and sizes depending on the manufacturer. So you might need that extra gap in there to give you some more degrees of freedom, so to speak, to get the right setting on your distance from your ring gear. So if any of you guys have a better way to measure it, please leave a comment below. I don't even know how I can measure it with the pin because with the bell housing on. So yeah, we'll leave it at that. Leave a comment if you got a better way. Other than that, the next episode, we're going to put everything back together, have another hat contest, especially you guys with a Tremec and a hydraulic clutch. You're going to want to pay attention because it's not that easy. So I'll give you a couple tricks there to make it easy. So until next time, build them fast, drive them faster. See ya.